All right, so before we get too much further with working with this low poly geo and creating it with Retopology, I want to show you some useful features here. So I'm going to tap the A key. Oh, here's another important thing. If you tap the A key and you don't go back to your retop, that just means that probably there's been an autosave or something, which is the case here. And once you do that, once there's an autosave, Zbrush will disable edit topology. So I just have to tap the A key to get this back to being optional, and then I can just hit edit topology, and you'll see it'll go back to what you're expecting you should see with an editable retop like this. So let's say I've got everything here that I'm happy that I wanted and I'm happy with it. I'm going to tap A, and then I'm going to come over here and hit Make Polymesh 3D. And when I do that, look down here, it's going to create a new subtool. So it's brand new subtool, floating out in space. There's nothing else in here. You may notice that with some of these other projects, I have 414 subtools on this one and 142 on this one. This is like version 20, and this might be version 40 of the same file. Not all 414 are associated with the head. That's the whole body. But anyway, so now I got this piece floating, and I want to actually bring it back into this scene. So I'm gonna hop back to where I was, and you can see it's got that 2 there because I've got my base geo and my Z-sphere. And then I'm just going to come over and hit either append or insert. Append is going to put the new geo, which is always going to be down here at the back of this 3D meshes list. Append is going to put it at the end of the list, and insert is going to put it underneath whichever subtool you have selected. So if you've got a whole bunch of things and you're working in the middle, you can easily insert your new subtools where they need to go. So now I've got this geometry, and at this point I no longer need my retop. So I can just hit delete topology. Got to make sure edit topology is turned on, and then there's my geo. Let's say hypothetically I have something like this, the star here, right? And that's maybe it's a piece of geometry I made, and I want to go back to the retop or whatever. I want to make some edits to it. You can convert geometry into retop. So in this case, I'm just going to pick this star thing here because it's going to be pretty easy to grab. But you just have to select your Z-sphere, disable edit topology, and then hit select topo. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you access to any of the geometry that's in your 3D meshes list. So in this case, I'll just grab this thing that I just made, or I guess we're talking about the star here. So I'll select that, and then if you come down to wherever your retop is, see I got the red line of death there. But anyway, the star has been converted into editable retop, right? So it's a very simple process of going from your retop to geometry and then back to the retop if you want. So once you've generated your geo, you definitely don't need to keep it around. As far as like, you don't have to have a bunch of Z-spheres with each one sitting on its own, whatever the retop that you assigned it. So tap F. Let's see if we can zoom in here. Grab this guy. All right. I don't actually want this piece here. What I'm going to do is delete it. And what I'm going to need to do with my geometry is I'm going to create something that will have the geometric configuration or whatever that will allow me to take advantage of ZModeler. So I'm going to want, where I've got these hard edges, I'm going to want to put an edge in the low poly that corresponds to it so that I can crease it. So we'll go ahead and enable edit topology. It's already turned on. And I'm going to turn symmetry on. There isn't, when you've got a Z-sphere selected, you're not going to get like a corresponding cursor on the other side of your geo. So you just might want to go to transform and confirm that symmetry is on, and in this case the x-axis is the default. So I'm going to make my draw size a little smaller. We'll start right at the middle. You can kind of see how this is all going to work. And there's one thing I didn't talk about yet, which is that you can give this a thickness when you create the geo, but I'm gonna probably just do all that using extrude in the ZModeler brush. So I'm just gonna go around what I would like to be this kind of plane, and you can see, right, that's a very, very common issue. It didn't weld those points, it just drew right across. So when that happens, just tap the Q and hold Alt. Q is draw, Alt is going to be erase. And now I want to hold Control and click on this point so that I can just continue on my merry way here. Lots and lots of different programs have this kind of feature available. This retop by clicking on points. In Maya, it's called quad draw. I have some tutorials on that. It should be fairly easy to track down on YouTube if that's where you happen to be watching this. And I'm just going to continue around to something like this. All right. So, and then we've got this surface here. So I'm going to go ahead and include that. So I just tap the control. And you may notice that I am diligently staying in quads. Let's see. I'm just going to go ahead and do this entire interior here. So we'll give it some kind of a crevice. So it's also totally reasonable if you are inclined to go through the trouble. You can just use regular old sculpting tools to create high poly geo. You don't have to do this step. If you want to sculpt it, you can sculpt it. So right here, I've got an option. I can either put a triangle here, or an edge here to create a triangle. I can put an edge here to create a triangle, or I can run this up, right? And I don't really need the extra geometry here because that's just a flat spot, but it might be nice to have it up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run it up, and you can just click on those edges and get your geo. So that's going to be a nice quad. It's a good idea to try to keep the spacing of your geometry as even as possible. And I know I've got an entry into this nostril here and an entry into this nostril here and then two on the inside. So I'm just going to kind of stay. So like right now I'm working in a specific lane as I go around the inside of this feature, because what I don't want is to end up with a scenario where I have like this, right? So if this is also another issue. Right now I can't click on the mesh without, I can't move anything without clicking on the mesh because I'm so zoomed in. If you just tap the W key to go to move mode, you can move the camera without having to worry about messing up your geo. But anyway, so what I was saying is I started this edge and I went all the way around. Kind of do want to move this up a little bit. And then I ended up with a scenario where I would basically have a spiral, right? So that's where you kind of, like I was hoping I could avoid that because of the, like just staying in the strip here, but it's really not that big of a deal. And in fact, might be a good opportunity for everybody to see what happens when you have a triangle. So I'm gonna hold control and we'll just fill this little space in here. Try to conform, whoops, let me tap the W key so I can move the camera. Back to Q, hold control, click the vert that I want to begin drawing from. Tap solo here. Because now we just have this hole. And with the hole, I will just connect across the bottom here. So this is an illegal face. It's got 5 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm just going to go ahead and go across like that. So that is what the retop looks like. And there's what the geometry might look like. So there's still a pretty good distance from where we want to be, but I'm going to go ahead and hit make polymesh 3D. And then we'll hop back over to our main scene, and I'm going to append this in. And now let's set up some poly groups using ZModeler. So I'm just going to hold Alt, and there are probably a couple ways that we could have done this, but this is probably the easiest. I'm just going to start throwing some creasing. I know I want that to be creased. I know I want the inside to be creased. So we can crease that. And then probably going to want some other stuff in here as well, and that's going to be more, I'll tap the Control W to put everything on one poly group. We can do a crease poly group there. And then I'm going to want this edge here to be creased, so I'm just going to go to my crease edge loop complete. And you can see it ran over there, which isn't the effect I was going for, so now I'm just going to, we'll just turn the creasing off on those guys. And now I need to give it some thickness. You can extrude it before doing the creasing if you want. There's not really a hard and fast rule on that. But let's see, we'll do Q mesh, polygroup all, and I'm going to drag it down because I want my thickness to go in, but you can see that's inverted the normals. So I've got a little button right here pulled out of the menu, but if you go to visibility, now which one is it? Display properties, flip. And there's this. So now I'm going to do another crease polygroup, and I'm going to uncrease this corner here. And I'm going to uncrease that corner back there. We'll zoom out a little bit. Probably uncrease that one. All right, so now I need to set up my crease level and smooth subdivisions, and we'll talk about that in the next video.